Okay, we'll go ahead and get it started. It's 2 o'clock, and obviously this is week 10. And let's see. Okay. Okay. Good. Alrighty. Okay. Now, you've got a couple of assignments this week: the management decision problems and the interactive session, and number 9 and IS number 7. And just for everybody, you've been doing good job. This last week was very, very, very good. Better than it's been at all since I've been taking a look at them. So everybody's whipping things into shape. Now, I want to just kind of keep us on track here in terms of where we are in the semester. We've got these 2 assignments now. Next week, you've got a couple of assignments and the Loudon Chapter 12 test. And you're going to notice I keep repeating these management decision problem assignments and the interactive sessions. And they're 2 kind of different critters. You put your teeth into a case study or a concept a little differently on each one. And like I said, there's very marked improvement in terms of what everybody's been doing. And some good selections. I thought the one last week that dealt with the potential security issues around that massive game playing site was, everybody did a good job at it. A couple of people took, I think, the lumber company, but some good stuff overall there. Now, following that, you've got one of these, this will take us to week 12, another management decision problem, and then Loudon Chapter 13, and then some resources there on spatial analytics or spatial analysis and ArcGIS. And what you're going to see is more and more where you have a application that enables you to do all of those things with one application. It's just a matter of time before those all get kind of melded together. Then some TED Talks, and I'm still mulling over either an extra credit, maybe a quiz on them. I don't know. We'll see. But they do come with with transcripts. Now there's Thanksgiving week, and then that takes us into the last part of the course. Okay, and I give you time there to work on your finals and any other. I don't think I've given you any other projects to do there. And then your final week, okay? And you do have an opportunity. I think I had erroneously told someone that I might add an extra credit opportunity, but I did. And so I've got the instructions for that. If you're going to need extra credit, you can do that. And then a couple of kind of hands-on projects, and then finally a couple of exams, and that'll be the final. Now, the final exam schedule for us, and we're moving down to that point where we need to kind of be paying attention to it. And let's see if it's going to open up for me, render or not. Here we go. This is right from the OBU website. And so a course like this, it goes 2 to 3:15, and it's one of those odd times. So we start, according to the rules, we start the final at the same time we would start the class. And you know, this is a 2 to 3:15 Monday, Wednesday class. So that being said, on Wednesday the 12th, that will be our exam. And I'll speak with you some more about strategies and all that, and whether you need to be physically present. I go through a whole lot of well, I provide also the verbiage from the university website about these exams and how they're done. And I want to alert you to the fact if you're going to have more than 2 final exams in one day, okay, and you want to reschedule a third one of the 3, you need to contact the dean's office May the 7th, 2018, by Monday the 7th. That's that first week of finals. Now, I would recommend if it's looking like that, right, find out find out the days and times of your final exams, and you can do that. You can go over to the website, it'll be, and find those and get that filed, so you don't find yourself in a crisis mode having 3 of them in one day. if you do end up with 3 in a day and you don't let anybody know, you've kind of bought that bullet on your own. So that being said, we'll move back up here to week. We're moving down here to week 10. Excuse me, my brain's not working. And this management decision problem, the interactive session, and I want to take a look at it for just a moment. So I'm going to pop over into the library here and grab that, and page is that thing on? It's 364. Okay, I'll take a look at it. And it's going to take its time. All right. And here you go, the management decision problems. And there's 9, 8, 9, 9, 9, 10. You could do any one of the 3 that you care to do. That's your choice. And some kind of interesting ones. All of these are fairly interesting, and when you apply the right analytic template to them, they start to make a little bit more sense. Now, what else have we got? Interactive session number 7, that's on page 396. So we'll go back here and let's find 396. Take a look at those. And then we'll get rolling. Okay, these involve customer relationship management software and applications, and that's the one I would like you to work with. And if you're a marketing major, you really do need to be paying attention on this case, because you're going to see this just about anywhere you go to work. And if you get an interview and someone says, have you worked with a CRM platform, and you're going, huh, you probably have forfeited an opportunity for yourself, because it's becoming one of the most important tools that we have. Now, let's go back here, and I have a series of resources for you, as I always do. Okay, and what I want to try to do is to perhaps put them into some kind of a perspective. So I want to go ahead and I am going to go ahead and I'm going to jump to chapter 12, okay? And this is not entirely related, but some of it's an offshoot into some of the resources I've got there for you. But this chapter talks about enhancing decision making, okay? Now, I want to do a little annotation thing here, so I think I'm going to find my little drawing deal. Love that thing. And if you probably have heard me say in some other courses, when we make a decision, okay, and I'm going to go back on to the draw, and I'm going to try to draw what looks like a bell curve, okay. When we make a decision, most people think, or most decision makers intuitively adopt the idea that decisions are binary. In other words, there's this magic line right here, and everything on this side is right and everything on this side is wrong. And to a certain extent, that's true, okay? And then you get these gray areas in between. But when we do decision making, we have to really think about the fact that decisions are not binary, they're more continuous, meaning they can run the gamut from this is my sales target to, wow, we did that really well here, or this is my sales target and uh-oh, I'm in bad shape over here. So we've developed tools, and with the technology that we have now and the development of things like dashboards, we can we can run scenarios, put key variables in represented by obviously numbers. We can build those kinds of little models, and we can start to see the possible outcomes of our actions. Now, this chapter in 12 is I think for all of you the most important, because it's going to expose you to the tool that, regardless of what industry you're in or what you do, you're going to work with one type of these tools, perhaps even all of them. And they've got some information about, like, they open up with this thing about big data, and of course here's the typical template we have, and that we, the management, the organization, and the technology dealing with some type of solution. Okay, and the authors start to do a good job of giving us the types of decisions, okay, and how the decision-making process works. And you really do, if you want to be, if you're smart, you will go ahead and you'll handle business decisions like working off of a truth table. And you've probably seen me do this before, okay? And I'm going to divide this, all right? And you may remember, you may not, when you took statistics, you talked about type 1 and type 2 error. Now, here we have, let's call it a response, okay? And that would be response 1. This would be response 2, okay? And this is condition 1. And this would be condition 2. Now, there are going to be some, let's say that I'm thinking about my competitor's going to raise their price, okay? C1 means that is indeed going to happen. C2 means my competitor is not going to raise their price. They might lower it, I'm not sure. So I have I have to try to be prepared to respond to that, and based on that response, I'm going to get certain payoffs. Now, here's what response 1 would be, okay, I raise my price and my competitor raises the price. I'm in good shape. I raise my price, but my competitor doesn't. That's not good news for me. And then I have a second alternative down here. And, well, this would be I raise the price. And here they raise their price, but I don't. So they got an advantage here. And over here is they don't raise their price and I don't raise my price and I'm okay. You see, the decision-making really is not, it flows along a continuum more than it does just simply a binary yes or no. And when we look at these, we look at type 1 error and type 2 error, and type 1 error is when we say that something's there, but it's really not. The worst is type 2 error, when we say something's there, we say something's not there, but it's there. Think of it like if you went to the doctor and you had a check, you had something that's going on with your body that's not right. And so you go to the doctor and they test you for cancer, okay? And which would you rather have? Where they say falsely you have cancer, they're wrong, but they think you have it. Or would you rather they say you don't have it, but you actually do? I'll take number 1 any day. I'll take a scare any day from really having it. So that's the world in which we live, in which we make decisions based upon the conditions that were out there in dealing with the market and our choices in terms of our alternatives and how we make those decisions. So we have these tools that we've designed to enhance our decision making, and their decision support tools. They've come quite away from what they used to be. They're obviously a little bit more sophisticated than they were at one point, but what they allow us to do using the digital technology that's there, etc., they allow us to put in more data, okay, in terms of our decision making and to see what the possible outcomes are. Now, just to show you how that's how it is embedded, not kind of, but actually is embedded. Let me pull this case, it's in here, and I'll show you. All right. Here we go. This is one for the management science course. Okay. And we're doing some work. This is we're trying to use optimization, and we have a couple of this is a company, and we have a couple of products that they make. I think they're bags. And they have some production time for their standard line and their deluxe line of the bags. And they have a certain amount of time or personnel hours devoted to that process of cutting and dyeing. Then sewing, finishing, and then inspection and packaging. And they have a marginal cost attached to each of those. And so what they want to do is develop is balance this so that they maximize their total profit. Excuse me. Now, if you're taking management science with me right now, or you've taken it, this will make some sense, but I'll show you here in just a second. So the next piece we have to do is they say, okay, I want to maximize these total profit. And so that means I'm going to produce a certain number of bags of the standard and the deluxe variety, okay? And so then I have what I call my constraints. And the constraints are the hours that I can use. That's what I have up here. This is the left-hand side. And then we have the hours available. And notice that in each of these, we make an assumption. These Boolean characters indicating what? That I can only use that much or less. So I have a constraint. I have a limit. Managers don't have unlimited resources. So we try to look at these kinds of situations and say, what do I do? Well, this little spreadsheet, and this just has a little we just use the optimizer in Excel, and I'll just show you real quickly. And now I've created for myself a decision support tool, and let's see, I want to go over here to solver, excuse me. Now this is the solver, and what solver does is it uses optimization processes or procedures. Every decision you're ever going to make is going to fit in one of three categories. You're either going to try to maximize something like profits, you're going to try to minimize something like costs, or you're going to have a target value that you have to reach. Maybe you're an advertiser and you're trying to put together your media buy, and you have to have so many, and you've determined certain units that tell you how the composite of how many times a person sees your branded product or whatever in, maybe online, maybe on television, hear about it on radio, whatever. But here they've decided that they've set an objective and they're going to maximize, the total profit. So then they have the changing variable cells, and those are B16, okay, through B24, B21 to 24, and then D21 to 24, and those are the cutting and dyeing, these constraints or operations. Everybody with me so far? Okay. And at this point in time, if you run that, you have that set up, and you run the solver, and you'll end up with a maximum total profit. Now, you'll notice something right here, and you'll see this GRG nonlinear. What this means is the data, if we were to take an algebraic formula and just simply run the formulas and then plot them on a piece of graph paper, we're going to see that the data are not linear. In other words, they're not like this. And let me draw my little drawing here for a second. I'll just leave this. If we assume they're linear, okay, then we're going to assume that we have an XY and they're linear, or there's something, there's somewhat like that, but they tend to be linear in nature. And this, of course, will be the X, this will be the Y. But when we say nonlinear or assume nonlinear, we assume that, now I'm going to erase this for just a second. When we say they're nonlinear, then we're operating from the assumption that they may be like this, okay? And I'm not curving it down like I want to, but there's a maximum level. There's a point where the marginal profits per unit hits its sweet spot, and then from there on out, the law of budgets takes over, and I start to move back into a zone where it costs me more to make the stuff than to sell it. And that's when you're like a dog chasing its bone. A lot of companies can sell themselves out of existence and not even know they're doing it. The other route there, or the other approach, okay, is you might have costs. And let me look at a better little drawing tool. And I'll just do this. And I'm going to assume, okay, that marginal costs, okay, I can get what we call economies of scale, and I can come to this point, a sweet spot where I have the lowest marginal cost. So for every unit I make, I'm at the lowest possible cost. Now, the wonderful part, the thing that's nirvana for us as managers, is when I'm at the top of it, when I'm in the sweet spot for marginal revenue, and I'm in the sweet spot for marginal cost, because then, as you can see, I've got all of that gap there, and I'm making some serious money. But it's knowing when you're there. So the decision, so we developed tools to help us with these types of decisions, so that we can try to be a little more rational, but more importantly, we can run more and more trials, because there's a thing called the law of large numbers. And the law of large numbers simply means if I go fishing enough times out in the ocean, I'm going to capture a huge swordfish. The more I go down to Lake Texoma and I fish, I'll hit a large bass or something like that. So we try, using the tools that we have today, to generate scenarios or generate possible futures using mathematical models like we did just there with the optimizer, to say, okay, what will things look like if X, Y, and Z are going on? All right. Now, I can tell you that right now that people are very, very concerned in the economy. They're very concerned about the interest rates going up, which is why the Dow's dropping. So anytime people believe the interest rates are going to go up, the stock prices will go down, because it costs people more to do business. Now, I don't know what the Dow is today. Maybe we've had some days, I think it's down 600 points or 700 points or something like this. Now, back in the Depression in 1929, I think the Dow was at 1,200 or 1,500 at its height, and we had a drop of 400 and the economy almost tanked, and we had a worldwide depression. Now we can shed 500 points in with a Dow of 25,000. Yeah, it's kind of, but it's not biting us real hard. And we flirted with 30,000. I think we were at 27,000 last summer, maybe, or a year and a half or so ago. I'm not quite sure. But when I was your age, people said the Dow would never go beyond 10,000. It was like the sound barrier. It's this barrier that can't be transgressed, which is a bunch of baloney. When you're my age, the Dow's probably going to be at 50, maybe 100,000. Wow. That's because the economy is going to be so huge, and you have so much invested it's going to grow and grow and grow and grow. Who knows what will be the next set of companies that'll be the newer firms or newer types of firms will be invested that will come into play. All that being said, they walk us through some information here, and the authors do a good job of taking this and moving it in more to the mind of a manager than somebody who is working with computers or working with information systems or whatever. And they give you the business value of each of these enhanced decision-making tools, okay? And you could see they've got a nice array of these here, okay? And the kinds of dollars that that it's worth in terms of its annual value. And this is not pie in the sky stuff or something somebody made up. We know that the better educated a manager is, there is a solid increase up to a point in terms of your ability to make decisions. What you're going to encounter when you go out to work, I hope not, but you probably will, is you're going to meet a lot of people who might have gone to business school 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or many and maybe never went to business school, but they're not going to be coming at all this from that kind of analytic perspective you got to have. Businesses, because of global competition, that one thing alone, are much more fragile than they ever were before. They can fail much more easily. And especially if you're working in a firm that's kind of knowledge-based, you really are in a highly competitive situation because the talent's all over the world. So your value as a decision maker is based on your ability to do what we call signal recognition. And the second thing is to avoid noise. Okay, and every data point has signal and noise. It's true to a certain point to an extent, but it has always some surrounding variability. And your ability to say, okay, that number makes sense and it's on target versus I don't know what that means. That will be, for many of you, the difference of having a job or not, maybe even having a company. So these tools that have been developed for us are part of what we call a greater thing called knowledge management. Now, I'll give you a really good example of that. Long time ago, one of the profs on my dissertation committee got involved in designing a tanker simulation facility. In other words, simulating a large oil tanker having to traverse the oceans of the earth. But the big key point was when they came to the point where they had to park themselves and start to unload their fuel. And that's when you can get in danger because you can run aground tanker. Those things, even if the technology they have on them now, they're so large and so heavy that it might take them 20 minutes just to make a simple course and correction, and that can be a fatal error if they're not operating well. And it was incredible to go down there and see them. Now, the people who they hire to captain those things are exceptionally bright people, and they're very well trained, and they are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it would be the rare circumstance where you'd have one of them. Well, they treat them just like airline pilots. They do, because if they don't, and they end up with 1 million gallons of fuel spilled on somebody's shore, there's going to be some real problems. So we have these kinds of tools that are here to help us, and they do provide us a certain amount of dollar value because your decision making is enhanced. Okay, and that's really what this chapter is about. These tools that help you in terms of dealing with, I've got a decision to make. Do I have a tool that can help me do that? Do I get the data correct? Do I get my assumptions correct? And do I make a decision? Now, there are some people, and listen, I'm going to tell you that right now. There's some people out in the world that don't need this, okay? There are people like Bill Gates, Stephen Jobs, you can go down the line, Mark Zuckerberg. They don't need this stuff because they're not normal human beings like you and me. It's just intuitive to them. They just have the gift. It's not a lot different than, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but maybe some of you have friends over in the fine arts school who are learning to play the piano or the trumpet or whatever. And then there's a person who's never had a day of music school, and they practice on an instrument, learned it, and they can get in front of 30,000 people and blow them away as well as they play. But they've never had a day of music school in their life. They're just some of those people that got the gift. We don't all have that gift for good decision making, so we need tools to help us along the way. Now, this figure here, okay, helps us understand some of how we kind of move. And you remember that little diagram I showed you a while ago where we had the truth table. We had the conditions 1, conditions 2, response 1, response 2, and each of those are represented here. At the very top are those situations, okay, where we've got some really serious and some very, very unstructured decisions to make. And they have some examples there for you, like decide entrance or exit from markets, okay? If I am Google, do I continue to make phones or do I get out? because Samsung and Apple make fantastic phones. And am I willing to bet the company that I can make a phone better than them? I might be able to do some different things than they do, and I might be better just to say, forget it, I'm not going to try to do that, okay? Or let's say that that Walmart decides they're going to try to compete with Macy's. So we're going to have a Walmart department store that's upscale like Macy's, okay? Now that's a roll of the dice. That's a big roll of dice. And, maybe $500 million later, somebody's going to lose their job and there's going to be a lot of angry people. But, we tried. We thought that might work. And then you move down to more of water middle management decision making. But let me say something very quickly. This is deceiving because this blue area keeps coming down more and more and more to where when you go to work after about your 5th year, you're probably going to be making decisions that are like rolling the dice for the company. You're going to be making enterprise level decisions, okay? And that's why, at least for my money, I'm really intent on making sure you've got tools out there. And the first one is find a model that looks like this, that works. Then the second is get good data and plug the data in and simulate those data. And you can do that. You can use the randomizer and the random in between on an Excel and look at the possible outcomes, then be prepared to make the decision based on some of the heuristics of that, and that is your knowledge or your understanding of the industry, your company, etc. So this blue line is moving more and more down towards this middle management area. At the same time, not only are you asked to be more of a big picture person, but you're also being asked to be more of a structured and operational manager type person. Why is that happening? It's simple. We keep subtracting management personnel from companies. Every time companies have a big layoff, the first people that go are middle management, to the point where there are none of them left. Then we start saying, okay, can we do without a supervisor for every store? Can we do it with supervisor for 3 stores? So you're functioning like you're maybe a little bit above, but you're down there at that level where you're dealing with some of the mundane stuff as well. Because sometimes in those mundane details, that's where the devil lurks. That's where you might find an insight that will help you or not. So you have to leave, when you leave here, you have to have a mindset that says, everything I do for whoever I work for, I'm doing it as if I own that company. That will be their expectation. And if you can't or you don't do that, best of luck to you and to your company. So we're seeing this kind of traditional, this triangle is being spread to the point where middle management, okay, is just, well, they're just not. We used to say here, when I first started, this is 12 years ago, used to say we produce a lot of really good middle managers. Okay, they may not advance to the corporate, they may not be C-level, corporate suite level people, but they'll be upper middle management, and they'll be working, most of them, for a large company, and blah, 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 blah. And then things changed. We had the financial crisis in 2002, 2007, 2008, and on. We're just now kind of climbing out of it for all intents and purposes. And suddenly all those jobs started disappearing. Okay. Somebody was telling me the other day that there's a projection out there that we're going to need, 50,000 more certified financial planners in the next 20 years. I hated to tell them that the folks over in Asia have developed automated systems, decision support systems, that eliminate the need for a certified financial planner. In fact, they'll do a better job of it than that planner would. And that's when those of us who might work in that industry are looking. It's the same thing with travel agencies. When the first travel apps came out, people who are in the travel industry, travel companies, laughed it off, thought it was dumb. Now, most of those places are gone. they closed up they closed at the strip mall or there, whatever, and people are using all these tools and apps that are out there. The companies there are some out there, like Globus is one of the top companies who embrace that technology. They're here. So this is more than just some software you learn. It really augurs or forecasts kind of a change of what we've got going on. And they walk you through this so-called decision-making process. Now, if you've taken management science with me, or you're going to learn, and I stress this almost every class session, there's a big difference between decision-making and problem-solving. All right? Problem-solving is I research a problem and I come up with a solution. Decision-making is I choose the solution. Okay? There's a book out there by a man named Tufte, I believe Tufte, and he talks about, it's a book about how we present data. And he talks about the one of the space shuttle disasters and how the people that morning at NASA and the contractor were interacting. And they just simply, there were some of them are saying they just didn't believe that it was too cold to launch. Okay? Well, those things were really nothing but a big gas can with a really thin layered skin, and they were easily punctured. And then you had the shuttles themselves when they'd take off, and people would see debris going, "What's that?" And it was of course those tiles. Okay, the heat tiles that absorbed the shock coming back in the atmosphere. Well, that tragedy unfolded because people just weren't paying attention to the fact that, the data, we're getting a lot of data readings that this isn't going to work. And so they went ahead and had it, and they had the disaster. So there's a difference between problem solving and decision making. And so it's important to understand. Now, here in the chapter, they talk about the decision making process, and you can see it's intelligence, design, choice, and then implementation. These first three, okay, are exceptionally important. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't do these well, this won't matter, the fourth one. If you do these well, but you don't do the fourth one, the other three don't matter. They have to be done consistently and done well for you to have a good decision. And part of that is that first point, the intelligence, okay? If I were going to be a doctor and I was in medical school, hey, if I was even in pre-med, I'd want to know everything I can about the human body. It's a simple reason. One of these days, if I walk through the process, I'm going to have a real live human being in front of me. And if I mess up, it's a bad day for them and a worse day for me, because I'm left holding the bag. It's the same if you say you were going to go out and work in law enforcement. Okay, when do you pull a weapon and use it? When you got a body cam on in the public and all that stuff. How do you make the decision at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're chasing somebody through a backyard that I've got a real live fugitive, or I've got someone that's scared of what's going on with them? If you make the wrong decision, it can be fatal. So this whole question, first of all, intelligence is discovering and looking for patterns. And every industry, situation, it has patterns and definable patterns, and you want to find those. More importantly, you dig deep to say, why does the problem exist? Why is a company hemorrhaging red ink all over? Why is it losing billions of dollars every year? Well, those losses are symptoms of a deeper problem. So we've got some tools that can help us do that. And then design, what are some of the various solutions to the problem? 95% of the time, that when you're out there working, your company is going to face problems that everybody else in your industry has or has run into at some point. So if you try to reinvent the wheel, you're just wasting a lot of people, time and energy. Often, you're going to find that someone else has run into this, and they can give you a little bit of a design, a little bit of help in terms of, okay, here's how I would deal with that. and maybe even how are your alternatives. And then the choice. Okay. I'll never forget. I took a course on location analysis, and we went through all of these different ways to figure out. We had the semester consisted of 4 problems. The first was, where do we put a port of entry? And so we had this magical country, and it was an island, and we had to figure out, where do we put port of entry? Where are we going to put where the big ships come in and drop their stuff off? And we were given all kinds of data and information. Then the second problem we had was choosing a carrier for our company. We manufactured stuff, and so we had to figure out, are we going to use a hybrid system? Are we going to use one system? What are we going to do? And then we came to one where we had a third problem, where we had to locate a manufacturing facility, and we had to go through all this stuff, these variables. Okay, and at the end of the course, the fourth one is, where will we put the headquarters? Well, we'd use all these models, all this stuff. And the last day of the course, our instructor says, you'll put the headquarters typically close to where the CEO grew up, if you're going to move headquarters. And we're all going, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So sometimes there are political decisions that are made that have nothing to do with the realities of your business. And you're going to be caught in some of those, and all you can do is say, I just hope and pray that this choice doesn't kill us. But you'll have those situations where people will just, founders are the worst. Founders of companies are really the very worst, because they forget that there's a time and a day when they got to go, I got to let this go. Now, I think we have some courses here in new ventures. Is that in venture capital, or am I correct about that? I think maybe in entrepreneurship. And being an entrepreneur is like being a boat owner. The happiest day of your life is when you get the new boat. The saddest day of your life is when you let the boat go. And you may have poured millions of dollars into it, but when you say bye-bye to the boat, that's tough. My parents my mom stuck with one thing. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. That's all I can say. He was one thing, then another, and another. And finally, at a certain point, I said to him, it's time to close down the casino. It's time to stop. And he wasn't happy about it. But on the other hand, at a certain point, when you've made enough money that you don't even know how much you've got in your account, it's time to quit. Because basically that's become a scorecard, and you've got other human beings involved in it. And so he sold out. But then you come to the implementation part, all right? And things have to happen. And I can tell you that I don't know how many times that I've seen that a company would really stumble on this piece. This would be the part, the implementation part, where things just didn't work out because they didn't do it well. They had a great plan and they didn't execute it. I was watching the game Saturday, and OU and who were they playing? Kansas State. And I think it was like 34-0 at a halftime or whatever. They're early in the third quarter, and the kid that's playing for quarterback for OU is really, really good. And he throws and he misses his receiver. And they panned over to the head coach, and he was livid. And I go, wait a minute, you're up 35 points. Why are you upset? And I realized he's upset because at this point, they're playing against themselves. Do I execute? Okay. And if you have a team, one of these elite teams, then you'll start seeing these people you've never heard of, so-and-so running back, so-and-so doing this, and they're underclassmen or they're backups who are getting their chance. And they're often as good as people at playing at other schools as starters, but this is their chance to be seen. Alabama does it all the time. They just keep running out more people. They're all big and strong and mean and good. And so when I saw it and I understood the coach, I understood Coach Rye because he was angry because his quarterback didn't execute. And see, that could be the third quarter and a first down he's got to make to get into the college football playoffs. It could be the fourth quarter in the playoffs to win a game and failing to execute. So as I watched that, I said, okay, this is a coach who truly understands this issue of implementation. He understands that execution is everything. So just because you beat somebody 40 points on Saturday doesn't mean that you'll do the same thing to the next people that come along. You've got to learn how to execute. So implementation is one of those. So these tools help us see this and understand what's going on. Okay? And you'll see they walk us through the stages of decision making. You say, this is a course in MIS. Why would I have this in here? Well, if you're going to go out into the world and you're going to work for a good employer or you're going to be successful, you're going to use these tools. And you'd better know how. Okay? I guarantee you, before anybody in the armed services gets into a $250 million fighter, they have been checked and rechecked for is it likely they might take the thing and fly to China and give it to the Chinese? Is it possible they might fly it over Los Angeles and strafe the city? They do all kinds of psychological profiles, and if they find one little crack in someone's psychological profile, they ground them until they find out what's going on. Then they know everything about every piece of technology in that weapon system. It's a platform, it's a weapon system, and they have to know that. So this process of understanding, how we go through these decision-making pieces are important. So you have to see this, and then if you're working with some DSS platform or executive support platform, this ought to be this should be tattooed in your forehead that says, I get it. I see the intelligence, design, choice, implementation, and this all really boils down to everything leads up to the point where I implement. IT is worthless if it doesn't help me make decisions. It's totally worthless if it doesn't help me make good decisions. That's what it's designed to do. And it doesn't have to be fancy schmancy. It can be just a spreadsheet in Excel, something like that. But it's got to be, but it's got to be something that helps me make decisions. Now they're going to walk you through some more of these kinds of issues in terms of real world decision making, and you're going to get a lot of that stuff in your management courses, I hope, and some of these information quality dimensions. Okay, now. When we deal with bad people around the world, okay, we've got satellites that cover the face of the surface of the earth about every week. So we know what's going on. The issue for us becomes on the ground. Do we have somebody there in the location that's confirming or not confirming what we think we're seeing in the sky? So you've got to have that type of confirmation. And so you say, yeah, it looks like they fired up their reactors again. Yeah, they're making fission material. Yeah, they said they wouldn't, but they are. And you just can't fly over and say, yeah, we think it's that. We can see that. You've got to have human beings in the spot. And it's going to be the same situation for you in business. If you develop a product or a product service bundle and it doesn't sell, and then suddenly you're going, why isn't it selling? That's the point where you've got to get some customers and find some customers and end users and say, what's happening? Why does this not work for you? What's the issue here? Okay? And that's about really all a company can do. I hope you catch it fast enough. But the information quality, all right, is extremely, extremely important. They walk you through those. And I think the first is do the data represent reality is the toughest part of all of them. Are you pulling data that are valid? Are you pulling data that are reliable? And that's kind of a tough one. Although We have enough information out there now, say from like product reviews, usage of products, what the problem might be. And so we do have some ways to capture some of that and get some accurate insights into what folks are doing. And they're in that prior, in that prior chapter, they talked about Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, okay, and the 2008 meltdown. And it's a good example because basically what they did was they had people who were originating loans, and those loans were just absolutely crazy. For example, they tell a buyer, home buyer, forget about a down payment. We're going to pretend that you're independently wealthy. Okay, so we won't do a credit check. You said, what insane, crazy person would do it? Insane is someone who's selling real estate, because they make a fee for every time they sell a house, right? Yeah. Okay, so they already have a moral hazard built into their decision making. Big problem. Then you package that loan and you sell it back up to somebody who eventually ends up here with these folks at Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, and they have this set of 1,000 mortgages, a tranche, and they're told, okay, these are, and there's some good, there's some bad, and there's some ugly. But there's, in fact, we've got really good, yeah, kind of, and we have a so-called balanced portfolio. They didn't, because they were lied to, because they were given loans that didn't have the level of risk that people thought. In fact, they were all loan. They were all bad. So if you have 1,000 bad loans, how many would you think will go bad? You could start with 1,000. And when those 1,000 loans start to cascade, and you had a company called AIG, American Insurance Group, and what they did was they insured the bad loans. So they said to these folks like Bear Stearns, if you invest in these derivative products where you're getting some kind of a payment on the value of these homes and servicing the notes, okay, if something goes wrong, we'll cover you. And when everything goes wrong, who do you call? You call AIG, and the economy begins to tank. We came close to a point here, and people will never ever know. We came to a point where things would have happened. You and I'd go to the ATM machine to get money, and they wouldn't give us money. We'd use our credit card wouldn't work. The whole system was about to freeze, and thank goodness that we had some people at the Federal Reserve that stepped in and said, we got to do something about this and do it now. And that's why they did those bailouts and helped them out. What they didn't do, which prolonged our problems, was bail out the individual homeowner as well. We just bailed out the big banks. Okay, well, they give you some of these other types of caveats to look at. And they walk us into the world of business intelligence, okay? And they give you a long-winded answer about what they're talking about, how we define business intelligence, okay? Now, just my own personal definition is this. Business intelligence is any tool or set of tools that helps me understand what's going on outside my company, and helps me understand what's going on inside my company, and helps me understand how well I am relating to or working with my key constituents, especially my customers and my vendors, if I have them, and I do. You say, well, it's a stock trading company. Who's their vendor? Who's the vendor for, let's say, a big stock trading company in New York? They handle shares, and they do investments. Who is a vendor of them? What would you think? Well, one of their vendors is going to be all those Ivy League schools and their math departments. Most of those people today are highly skilled, highly trained mathematicians. Now, the funny thing is that those people are now being replaced by folks who understand technology and how to make technology work, like decision support systems, and being able to execute on trades. And if you don't believe me, if you're a finance major or just you're interested at all, there's a book out there called I think it's called The Flash Boys, and it's about a couple of traders. You learn everything you need to know about the internet, but they discovered that there was a company that had an algorithm that once there was a change in the market moves, bam, it was there faster than anybody. And because they had an arbitrage, not because they could think and go, I see a value out here. I'm the mystic finance person. I have all knowing, all seeing. There's a machine watching algorithms, watching patterns, and said, whoops, the price is going to go down here, buy now, and snatched. It's gone even faster than that. So some interesting stuff that's happening out there. The BI, it's a pretty simple definition. The authors try to walk you through some more complex things, and they give you that environment. And they walk that through business intelligence and analytics for design support. And again, they try to show you in a picture, okay, how that stuff all fits together. Now, so what else is in here? I think at this interactive session here, the technology, the tension between technology and human decision makers is a very, very interesting bit of reading. And they're talking about analytics in sports and the application of analytics in sports. And the other night in the World Series, I believe it was the one game that the Red Sox lost. Their manager had analytics, and the people, all of the announcers now, they have someone sitting beside them, or they have someone that's probably giving them a text message or something saying, this pitcher against right-handers, when you have a one-run lead, historically ain't done so well. Put in a left-hander. And then there's the eyeball test, and that's that person who's a manager or a ball player says, I've done this all my life. I think I can look at a pitcher and decide if he is still throwing well or not. And so the manager, the guy that's the manager for Boston, did something counterintuitive. He said, no, I'm going to stick with the guy I've got. And he did, and the Dodgers won the game. And that post-conference, I like to watch those because the questions now that come from sports reporters are really fascinating. It used to be, well, do you think he got drunk last night and that's why he didn't pitch well today? Or maybe his mama's mad at him or what's it? Instead, they're saying now, you knew he had thrown 73 pitches and his limit on pitches was 74, did you not? And this, it's almost like it's a statistics class. And here's this poor guy as a manager who's been playing baseball all of his life. Okay, and he knows the game inside and out, and he's got eyeballs. He understands the game. He's trying to answer the question, and they fried him. Now, the Red Sox went ahead and won, and they won because they had the better team. Well, anybody could even touch them. But this is an interesting read. Now, the same thing is going on in another performance art type of thing, and that's in the military. Okay. If you go back to our last really large conflagration, all right, and that was in Desert Storm, we lost more tanks in Desert Storm to ourselves than we did to the enemy. Okay, we had more friendly fire where our airplanes took out our own tanks because somebody had maybe not been trained sufficiently to recognize signatures or imagery, or maybe the people in those machines had not communicated exactly where they were. They had thousands of pieces of equipment within about a 700 square mile radius. Airplanes, ships, tanks, armored cars, jeeps, and they were trying to do control of all of that. So, and their biggest fear was, we're going to shoot ourselves up. The Iraqis were just like a minor annoyance as things, will I survive my own people? And so we lost more tanks to ourselves. And this is one of those situations where somebody was in the cockpit of a jet, or maybe in a helicopter, and something popped up on their screen, okay, and it looked like the enemy. And their first tendency is they fire. Some of those machines now have what we call a fire and forget system, and that is if it detects a signature, like a silhouette or a certain heat signature or a shape, it fires automatically. It doesn't ask the pilot permission. Okay, the pilot's job is to fly, and it's not like you would see in the movies of World War II where the pilots, they come in and no, because these systems are set up so that when they fire, they might be 10 miles away, 20 miles away. One of the most interesting lectures I ever went to was the guy. He was an Argentinian pilot. You remember you don't remember this, is before you were born. Great Britain fought with Argentina over the Falkland Islands, a set of islands down by South America. And the Argentine Air Force consisted of about a half a dozen French Mirage jets that at that point were considered outdated. And the English are generally affable people unless you get them in a soccer match, or in a roadhouse with too many pints in them, or if you kind of challenge them to a war, because they won't mess around. Okay, they've survived a few times themselves, and so the people of Argentina said, "Hey," and they sent their troops in and took over the island. Well, to make a long story short, the man who gave the lecture was a pilot, and he devised a plan to take out as many British ships as he could. Now, the British brought their ships in. Of course, they had Harrier jets and all these kinds of. They could fight out in just any environment. They have a Harrier jet, could go into ground support. These are the ones that have the wings that fold in, and so they can fly out and intercept people that might threaten their task force. And he devised a plan where he would fly along the shore, okay, of the South Atlantic, and then he would periodically pop up and take a peek. And when he did, he was mimicking the signature that the people back in the ships on their radar would see when they had their helicopters doing reconnaissance to figure out where are we going to land our troops when we invade the Falklands. And so he mimicked them. And the third time that he popped up, he fired a missile. It was an Exocet missile at the time of the state art. It had junky planes, but with really good missiles. And that thing took out a British warship. One missile. Boom. And they saw it coming, and they didn't have time to move. In fact, those, I guess they're designed to fall and lock on the target and follow it, and they'll just follow the target all the way till they explode. And this is like that kind of situation where the decision makers back on those ships, the people looking at the radar, saw this anomaly and just decided, well, it's one of ours. And probably what they should have done was say, hey, we've got an anomaly on the screen, and we don't think it's us. It's somebody else. Maybe it's an enemy. But they assumed because they had air superiority, it was one of theirs, and they paid the price. So it's an interesting read there, this one about sports. And this is one of these things about information and information systems, especially decision support systems that make things so very interesting to me. And I think hopefully when you get out there in the world, it won't be that exciting. I hope it's not, where you're betting your company, or if you don't understand what's happening in a market that you're about to go under. Well, I think we're going to call it a day. Thank you for letting me be a little more didactic than usual. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Anybody have a question I can answer for you? Okay. Thank you much, folks. Have a good one.